Man rescued baby squirrel, abandoned by its mother, and you won't believe how he thanks him. When this man stumbled upon an abandoned baby squirrel, he couldn't bear to leave it behind. Weak and delicate, he took the tiny creature home, nurturing it back to health. As the days turned into weeks, the squirrel grew stronger, and the moment arrived for it to venture back into the wild. What the squirrel did when it was put back in its natural surroundings surprised the man. What unexpected actions did the squirrel take? What happened next? Join us as we dive deeper into this heartwarming story on the Animal Needs Love channel. On March 27th, 2020, under the weight of the COVID-19 lockdown, the world felt like it had pressed pause. The streets were eerily empty, shops shuttered, and an unusual silence filled the air. Ethan walked along the deserted sidewalk, grateful to be out for a moment in the fresh air, though the quiet around him felt surreal, almost unnerving. It was in that silence that he heard it, a faint, fragile squeak coming from a patch of grass by the sidewalk. He stopped, looking down to find a tiny creature curled up, barely moving. Crouching, Ethan saw it was a baby squirrel, no bigger than his thumb, its tiny body frail and shivering in the cold. It had patches of soft, wispy fur, eyes sealed shut, and lay vulnerable, as if left for dead. Instinctively, he took off his hoodie, wrapping the squirrel gently in its warmth. "Hang in there, little guy," he whispered. Glancing around, he saw no sign of the mother, just empty streets and closed doors. This tiny creature had no chance on its own. Clutching the hoodie-wrapped bundle to his chest, Ethan felt a new sense of purpose amid the strangeness of the lockdown. He turned and headed home, heart pounding, knowing his mission had suddenly shifted. He would do everything he could to save this little life. Once home, Ethan gently set the baby squirrel down in a small box lined with a soft cloth, placing a heating pad beneath it for warmth. The little creature huddled deeper into the fabric, its tiny body still trembling, fragile and delicate. He knew he'd have to feed it soon, but as he scanned his kitchen for anything close to what it might need, he remembered reading that regular milk could be dangerous for wild animals. After some frantic research online, he learned he'd need a specific milk formula made for orphaned wildlife. The formula arrived after a nerve-wracking day and a half, and by then, the squirrel was even weaker, barely stirring as it lay curled in the corner of the box. Ethan prepared the formula, filling a tiny syringe with it, and carefully picked up the squirrel, cradling it in one hand as he brought the syringe close to its tiny mouth. "Come on, little one," he whispered, hoping for a sign that it would take the milk. At first, the squirrel didn't move, its small face pressed against the warmth of his hand. But as he gently squeezed a drop of milk onto its lips, the squirrel's mouth opened slightly, and he felt a tremor of hope. It took a tentative sip, its tiny tongue flicking out to taste more. Ethan let out a slow breath, relief flooding him as the squirrel accepted the milk, drop by precious drop. With each tiny mouthful, the squirrel's movements became a bit stronger. Its tiny paws started to clutch weakly at the syringe, as if understanding this was a lifeline. Ethan smiled, his heart lifting as he watched the little creature's determination. "There you go, Nutmeg," he whispered, the name coming to him naturally. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" Nutmeg's eyes remained closed, but the gentle sucking continued, a steady rhythm of survival. Ethan knew this was only the beginning of a long road ahead. With each passing week, Nutmeg's strength blossomed like the budding trees outside Ethan's window. His fur turned into a vibrant coat of warm browns, and his playful spirit returned with fierce energy. No longer fragile, Nutmeg bounded around the apartment, chasing strings and leaping onto Ethan's shoulder, his tiny paws tickling his neck. The joy in his bright eyes reflected their bond, stirring a bittersweet longing in Ethan's heart. Ethan often found himself contemplating Nutmeg's future during their quiet moments together. You know, he mused one evening as they sat together on the couch, Nutmeg curled up in his lap. I never thought I'd end up with a squirrel for a companion, but look at you now. You're practically part of the family. He chuckled, scratching behind Nutmeg's ear, and felt the little creature lean into his touch, purring softly. As the days passed, Ethan increasingly thought about the outside world. He watched Nutmeg explore their home, scurrying up curtains and diving into boxes, blissfully unaware of past struggles. Yet each day, Ethan felt the pull of Nutmeg's true nature. The world outside beckoned with trees to climb and leaves to rustle. One sunny afternoon, Ethan decided it was time for Nutmeg's first taste of freedom. He found a small clearing in the nearby woods, a safe haven for exploration. Heart racing, he gently cradled Nutmeg, feeling the warmth of the little creature that had stolen his heart. As they reached the edge of the woods, the scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers enveloped them. Ethan knelt, placing Nutmeg gently on the ground. He felt a lump form in his throat as he looked into Nutmeg's bright eyes, shimmering with curiosity and excitement. "This is it, buddy," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. "It's time for you to be free." Nutmeg hesitated for just a moment, looking up at Ethan as if sensing the weight of the moment. Ethan could hardly bear the thought of letting him go. "I know it's scary out there, but you'll be okay," he reassured him, swallowing hard. "You've got all the skills you need. You're a survivor." Then with a burst of energy, Nutmeg darted forward, scampering toward a nearby tree. Ethan's heart soared as he watched Nutmeg navigate the roots and brush, his small form a blur of motion. Nutmeg climbed higher and higher, pausing only to glance back at Ethan, his eyes sparkling with joy and freedom. "Look at you go," Ethan called out, pride swelling in his chest. "You're a natural. I always knew you had it in you." Nutmeg paused again, tilting his head as if he understood every word. "Don't forget me?" As Nutmeg reached a sturdy branch and paused, his tiny body silhouetted against the bright blue sky, Ethan felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. Would Nutmeg remember him? Would he still return? The woods were alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, the distant chatter of squirrels welcoming him back. "Go on, Nutmeg," he encouraged softly, his voice filled with pride and sorrow. "You belong here." With one last glance back, Nutmeg took off into the canopy, weaving through branches like a feather caught in a gentle breeze. Ethan stood frozen, watching until Nutmeg became a small dot against the vibrant green, a tiny figure racing toward the freedom he had longed for. After Nutmeg ran back into the wild a week later, Ethan looked out the window of his apartment building for his little friend in the trees. The void was deep and hurt his heart in a soft way. Even though he knew it was time for Nutmeg to go back to his natural home, the flat was very quiet without Nutmeg's soft movements or the warmth of his little body curled up on Ethan's lap. Over the next few days, Ethan got used to his new schedule. He worked, went for walks, and sometimes talked on the phone with friends, but he was always hoping to see Nutmeg again. When he got home each night, though, the trees outside were always quiet and still. Then, 3 days after Nutmeg left, Ethan saw a small strange thing on his windowsill. He got closer and saw a shiny acorn hidden among the flowers he had placed. This made his heart beat faster with hope. He whispered, "Nutmeg," with a smile on his face. It was like getting a surprise gift from Nutmeg, a small sign that she was thinking of him. The next morning brought another surprise, a cluster of seeds arranged neatly on the windowsill. This time, Ethan couldn't contain his excitement. "He's saying thank you!" he exclaimed, beaming with pride. It seemed Nutmeg was indeed finding ways to express his gratitude, even from afar. Each morning for the next few days, more gifts appeared. Sunflower seeds, tiny pine nuts, and even a colorful flower petal landed softly on the sill, each one a token from his little friend. But despite the gifts, Ethan hadn't seen Nutmeg again. He felt a mix of joy and longing, joy for the token of friendship, and longing for the connection they had shared. 5 months passed, and as summer painted the world in vibrant green and golds, Ethan had almost settled into a routine of his new normal. One crisp morning, as he sipped his coffee and looked out at the sun-drenched trees, he noticed a flurry of movement in the branches. His heart raced as he leaned closer, squinting into the foliage. There, among the leaves, was Nutmeg, now a bit larger and more confident, darting around with the unmistakable energy of a squirrel in its element. But what caught Ethan's eye was the sight of several smaller squirrels bouncing around beside him. Nutmeg had returned, not just alone, but with a family. Ethan felt a rush of emotions as he watched the little group play and explore. Nutmeg paused, glancing over at Ethan with his bright eyes, and for a moment, their gazes locked. It was as if Nutmeg was inviting him to share in this joyful moment, a reunion of sorts. Then, to Ethan's astonishment, Nutmeg darted toward the window, pausing to drop something at the base of the glass. It was an acorn, one of the very ones Ethan had given him, but this time with a twist of grass wrapped around it, a symbol of the life he had built. Nutmeg chartered excitedly, then scampered back to join his family, playfully chasing his siblings up the trunk of the tree. Ethan chuckled, overwhelmed by joy. "Look at you," he called out, feeling a swell of pride. "You've done so well out there." His heart swelled as he watched Nutmeg frolic, realizing that he had not just released a pet, but had contributed to the cycle of life, a life filled with freedom, family, and adventure. That's the end of the story today. I find it inspiring how Ethan's initial act of kindness evolved into a deep, meaningful relationship. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest creatures can teach us the most significant lessons about love, trust, and the inevitability of change. Additionally, the way Nutmeg expressed gratitude through those little gifts, seeds left on the windowsill, speaks to the idea that kindness begets kindness. In thinking about this story, I can't help but wonder about the connections we share with the animals in our lives. As I watch my own dog, Pow, explore the world, I see the same potential for joy and growth in the bond we share. What do you think? Have you ever formed a special bond with an animal? How has that experience influenced your life? If you find this story interesting, please give it a big thumbs up and share it with others. Finally, don't forget to turn on our bell and subscribe to our channel Animal Needs Love so you don't miss any of our new videos. Thank you for your support and see you next time.